One, to be seated as quickly as possible, please. Welcome back, everyone, after that refreshing tea break. As we resume our conference, we will now dive into the technical sessions filled with insightful discussions on the various aspects of the role of DRE in India's sustainable development. This session will convene industry leaders and ecosystem enablers to explore the amplified role of DRE in India's energy landscape. This session will be moderated by Dr. Dhruba Purkayastha, Director Climate Policy Initiative, and will be joined by Dr. Sharan, Chairman DESI Power, Mr. PC Sharma, Joint Director International Solar Alliance, Mr. Chintan Shah, Principal Advisor NSEFI, and Mr. Girija Shankar, GM Energy Efficiency Services Limited. सभी के लिए जोरदार तालियों के साथ स्वागत. Ladies and gentlemen, before we dive into the proceedings of the panel discussion, we have a special talk on the concept of DRE. This will be delivered by none other than the chairman of DESI Power, Dr. Sharan, who is an eminent personality who needs no introduction, who's specially flown in from Switzerland to be a part of this conference. Let's join hands in welcoming Dr. Sharan, ladies and gentlemen, for a special talk first, and then we delve into the deliberations of this discussion. So.
Thank you very much, dear friends. It's very nice to be here again after a long time, and I thank PFI and Sahaji for inviting me to participate in this meeting. I would very much like to you have been hearing this morning all about what the future holds for us in the renewable energy sector. Maybe I'll take a minute or two to be a bit nostalgic and say it's almost 50 years ago that I had the privilege to make the very first presentation on renewable energy to the then Minister of Power in his room, where it was the times of the first oil shock and the big efforts that were on at that time to see how to manage, especially the rural areas, which were almost practically 100% dependent on diesel fuel in those days. Of course, at that time, there was no MNRE, there was no MNES. There was one coordinator in PMO's office, and the entire renewable energy program was managed from Department of Science and Technology with a small team who were trying very hard to get R&D going from the universities, CSIR labs, Indian Institute of Science and IITs, and so on. I had the privilege to spearhead the industrial part of the renewable energy program, and BHEL took the lead. I used to be at that time the director of engineering of BHEL, and we at that time tried to industrialize right from the beginning what happened in the labs, bring them to the field as quickly as possible. I remember very well the first solar thermal plant that was one of the first that was built in the country on the rooftop of Qutub Hotel in Delhi. The other interesting point was right from the beginning, the solar system, we built a plant in BHEL Hyderabad. The generator factory used to use open fires during the cold months, and that affected the quality of our generators. So we built a solar thermal plant with pipe heating from the top to heat an entire factory. And of course, that was the part of our sensitization program. The PM's house got a solar heating system for the Prime Minister's bathroom. Early biogas plants, the engines were tested in Hyderabad for dual fuel applications. I remember going to a small village in Haryana, sitting with the farmer there who had the biogas plant, and this old man says to me, you know, what is marvelous is any time I want a cup of tea, I can have it. And biogas at that time, compressed biogas, it was a little pillow. And you pressurized it by keeping a weight, bricks, which kept the pressure on the pillow and ran a small burner. So these are, of course, one of our pride at that time was also that we built one of the first globally, a 10 kilowatt solar thermal power station on IIT Madras, on the roof of the IIT Madras. It was commissioned in 1978, and it was an augmented solar thermal, flat plate collectors. We had a 10 kilowatt plant, and we were really very proud of it. Now, of course, all of you know much more about renewable technologies than I do, and I am so very happy that we are today discussing this whole theme of decentralized renewable energy. Increasing global temperatures had not been recognized at that time as one of the reasons for introducing renewable energy. For us, it was entirely a matter of social and economic development of the country. And the role of solar and renewable energy was supposed to be focused on poverty alleviation in the villages. And that role of these DREs is still as valid today as it was way back in late 70s. As you also know very well, technology is no longer an issue. We don't have to, technology is no longer an issue. Costs have dropped, and they are dropped well below what we at that time projected as the break-even levels for a renewable energy power station. I built in where I live in Switzerland a solar thermal power station in 1992, which is still running, a 6 kilowatt power station. It cost us $15 per kilowatt, per watt at that time. And you know what the comparison is. But people still come all over. It's one of the few plants where they come to see that a PV plant can really run for 30 years and produce, even today, 70 to 75% of its rated capacity. So these are the type of things which we have to look at. And while fossil fuels have not yet receded to the extent that's required from the climate change issues, renewable energy is increasingly taking a bigger part globally and in India of the total energy scene. But the way this has to be done, I believe very strongly, and I'm very grateful that Mr. Shah has brought this up, to see how do we integrate DREs into the total energy and rural development programs of India. In spite of all the progress, I still am quite actively involved in villages in India. And I must say, in the area of social and economic development, there are large parts of our villagers who are well below where they should be. And I believe tomorrow, as you know, electricity for productive purposes is the driver of any country's economy. Electricity only for lighting is very good for the household, but it certainly cannot drive the social and economic progress of the villages. So we, right from the beginning, we built our first DRE from DESI Power in 1996. It was a 100 kilowatt power station, a handmade paper factory in Jhansi. It ran for 70,000 hours. We built the first microgrid, hybrid microgrid of PV and in 206. It's still running today. So Tomorrow, the primary driver of social and economic developments is electricity, and today also process energy for various agricultural requirements. The trigger, this has triggered in different ways of planning and as Mr. Shah said in his speech, viable business plans with the private sector, with the support of a regulatory environment from the government. So for us in India, traditional electrification programs, which have not yet, even today, with lines in every village, not reached the goal of adequate amounts of electricity being available for job creation, for agriculture, and so on. Today, when I'm interacting with a group of 15 countries from Africa and Pacific Islands, and their slogan for this whole program is energy, water, agriculture, and jobs. Now, this is the way where tomorrow's projects have to be assessed. And more and more countries of the global south are recognizing that we really have to look at the entire planning process for DREs at the national planning levels, but also at the level of each project that is built. As we know very well, no renewable energy today by itself is adequate for meeting the productive, social, and economic needs of a village. We have therefore to optimize locally the resources which are available in terms of energy, in terms of value addition, in terms of job creation, in terms of pumping, and that the moment you also have, on the one side, a variety of loads, and on the other side, a variety of generators, it's a complex system. Simple spreadsheet calculations today are not adequate for preparing business plans which fulfill the 4 or 5 essential conditions for making a success of DREs. I have had a large number of failures in my life. We built something like 60 or 70 village power stations. A lot of them were technology development programs, technologies which could be run by the villagers. That was our goal. It's not enough just to have a machine, but how does the villager run it? How does he maintain it? How is it integrated in the village system? Those are an essential part. And I am talking not about DREs for the industrial applications. I am talking of DREs for the village applications. So the integration of the entire energy system in the village in a viable way, from my failures, I have 5 points which every one of us who wants to do anything in the renewable area should remember. First of all, DRE-driven microgrids must provide dependable reliability. We have failed to do that. And round-the-clock electricity to the consumer, whether it's household, commercial, or industrial load. Which means that losses, a storage system becomes very important. Biomass, all these have in the context of 8,700 hours in the year. They cannot meet the criteria of reliability by themselves. So there is no way that you can today make a village DRE project without hybridizing the generation side. The moment you hybridize it and do the planning of the profitability on the basis of meeting 24 times 7 load, you have a very complex system on your hands. So last 3 or 4 years, with my colleagues in India, with some colleagues in America, we have developed a system dynamics model and made them cheap enough to be done here in this country so that everybody who wants to build a DRE, please do a system analysis, collect data. We have all the experience, all of us have experience about collecting data from the villages, data on the energy sources, data on, and do a first cut, a study of a model. The model doesn't give you solutions. What the model does is to tell you, if you did this combination, this configuration, this rating, you will have this economics. These are your target goals. This is how they will be fulfilled. It's up to the investor, up to the builder then to choose what combination he wants. And then please go into the feasibility phase. At the moment, we are completely product-driven. We have panels of this size, we have engines of this size, we put them together, and most of our microgrids today are either over-invested or under-invested, but none of them can meet the criteria of reliability at the lowest cost and with profitability. So 2 criteria that I have for DREs: they must be reliable round the clock, and they must provide a profit to the promoter of that project. Linked to me, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind, I do not know how many of you believe in that. If we linked DREs to the 92,700 panchayats that we have in this country, we have done our numbers, and I can tell you the DREs can take the load of providing adequate amounts of electricity, process energy, and social services needs of energy in all the villages of India. And that at a rate which creates jobs at the lowest cost. The job creation in a village is much lower than job creation in the industrialized sector. The cost of CO2 saving in DRE for a village project is virtually zero. We are investing in development. We are not investing in CO2 saving. So we don't have to cost the saving like that. And in a 500 kilowatt, 500 kilowatt total energy system where we provide the heating energy from the waste heat from biomass, where we have a PV and we run a tea garden, for example, you can earn $20,000 per year just from the CO2 savings. The most important thing that I would like to mention here is also that financial packaging is an equal part of this modeling that we do. It's not just the technical modeling. The financial packaging also has to have different models. If, for example, a tea estate has a lot of biomass, they just have to capitalize their biomass as an input to the energy plant for 7 years. They don't need any extra money for their equity capital if you are doing a 70-30 capital sharing. There are patient investors who say, as long as you are servicing the loan, we don't take a dividend. I can bring you investors like that. So basically, it's not just innovation in the technological areas that is needed. It's needed the linking of technological innovation with the financial innovation is required. And last but not the least, right from the beginning, training and skills development has to be a part of the project. It's not an add-on. It's not that we have to send somebody to ITI. It has to be a part of the project from that village. We have run a training center in our area for the last 25 years. And we have trained maybe 600 or 800 people. Most of them are no longer with DESI power. But they know how to run a gasifier. We have a lady in Baharwari who runs our power station, which is a hybrid power station about 30 kilowatt. So training, skills development as a part of the project, including the cost of that development, should be included. And please remember, and I do want to emphasize that, badly performing decentralized renewable energy systems are the greatest deterrent to the investors and promoters. Our track record on microgrids as a tool of village development is pretty poor. We have microgrids, a large number, which are largely focused, they are changing, no doubt about it. But at the moment, we have very, very few successful examples of DREs with microgrids at the village level. And that, in spite of the fact that we have all the resources and we have all the know-how and so on. And I personally believe that we are just going about it the wrong way for planning and implementation together with the prospective promoters. But as we all know, the proof of the pudding is in eating it. So unless we have a sizable number of DREs running with the two main criteria of reliability and profitability, delivering the impacts on the social and economic development of the villages, investors will not come and invest. And the governments today are not, policy-wise, whatever, they are not today the primary investors in this sector. It has to come from the private sector. So from my part, I am absolutely also prepared to put my time, my money, where my mouth is, to promote in properly packaged, properly optimized, 1 or 2 DRE systems in some village in India. And I will work provided you have a competent and committed management team to work with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, Dr. Sharan, for sharing your valuable experiences with all of us today. अपनी सफलता को बताना, उसे शेयर करना आसान है, लेकिन अपनी असफलता के बारे में भी बात करना और लोगों को मोटिवेट करना, इंस्पायर करना एक बहुत ही मुश्किल बात है, एक दुर्लभ बात है. आपका बहुत बहुत आभार for sharing those wonderful experiences with all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now beginning with the panel discussion. May I please request the moderator, Dr. Dhruba Purkayastha, to kindly please take over the deliberations from here. So.
Thank you. Thank you and good afternoon. And Dr. Sharan, thank you so much for your great, I would think, both DESI Power and yourself. You are an inspiration for many of us who are trying to get a DRE going, and it's a truly, truly inspirational story that you narrated. And surely we do keep in mind that DRE needs to be profitable and needs to be reliable, and that's a failed distributed renewable energy actually does not do good to any stakeholder. Thank you so much. But with these words, let me start with my panel discussion. But before I get to the questions which are there with me for specifics, but let me just have an opening round of DRE. And before that, since Mr. Sahai narrated a couple of stories, and one of the, or other movies, one is Swadesh and one is The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind from Malawi, I would also draw attention to another story or another movie where DRE could actually be thought of tangentially but as a solution. This is the year 2014, and the movie is called Katia Baj. Katia Baj was the story of Kanpur Electricity Supply Company, which had a lady managing director called Ritu, who was the managing director of EESL. And this story is based on, Katia Baj stands for, either you can call it theft of electricity, or you can call it powerless, as you want to translate. But the whole story is based on the deprivation or the scarcity of electricity, or the distributions company's inability, one, to provide, and then inability to meter and monitor. And therefore it leads that boy to set up a parallel distribution of what? Why Katia Baj? Because all of you would have seen Jhuggi Jhopdis where connections are cut out and they are then redistributed to various houses. And that's a parallel distribution company emerging out. And now think of, If you get a chance, please watch Kathiawar 2014. It's a very interesting display of the powerlessness which could have been even urban. We are talking of DRE for rural, this we are talking of DRE for urban, and this urban electrification could also, DRE could get applied here. So with this introduction, my first open question, and let me start with my friend and a long-time professional associate, Chintan, and to start with, and this is an open question to all of you, sir, is what we heard technology, we heard a lot of perspectives, but what is it, what ails DRE? What ails, why is DRE not scaling up? Policy, finance, feel free, open, regulation, policy, regulation, finance, technology, I'm assuming it's there, business models, yeah, business models. So, an open question, starting with Chintan. Thank you.
Thanks, Dhruba. Yeah, thanks, Dhruba. We talked in the morning about the business case. Sai have spoke about a business case from the government's perspective. The business case perception from the private sector is a little bit different. When a private sector gets involved into any business processes, there are 3 tests which a private sector always follows. One is replicability. Is it replicable? Yes, it is replicable. Second is scalability. It can be scalable. Yes, it is scalable. Third is sustainability. These 3 tests are primary, very, very important for any private sector to get into. So there's no wonder solar is doing good, because solar passes through 3 tests very easily. It is replicable. Is it scalable? Because it's modular. And yes, the pricing is making it sustainable. So that's the reason that solar is picking up in a big way. And this is true for any technology, just not solar. This is how a private sector operates. Because then they see, okay, fine, there's a lot of expansion possible, growth possible, let's invest money into it. One more thing I was always tell at various places and all, instead of using just distributed the word, I think we should use also the word embedded generation. Because we are actually embedding generation in a distribution area, essentially in a way helping the distribution network to essentially avoid certain capex, which is otherwise needed because density of consumption is going up. Now we are generating electricity at the doorstep. And second thing, obviously, it also helps in reducing distribution losses. Otherwise, you have to draw electrons from a transmission level. So embedded generation is more important as a word, essentially when you look in the urban areas. And that's what this entire rooftop scheme is about. Essentially going to generate 1 crore or 2 crore rooftops across India on an average of 2 to 3 kilowatt, talking about 25 to 30 gigawatt of embedded generation coming into India. And that's I think the beauty about it is a lot of distribution feeders need not actually go for strengthening, because as the consumption is going up in India, in urban areas, the density of consumption, you also augment distribution feeders, also strengthen it. That some amount of strengthening may not be needed because you're generating there and consuming there. And yes, distribution losses also. That's one part. But on a larger perspective, when you look at a DRE as a subject matter, I think there's a huge amount of scope. One particular sector which has been talked about but totally missed out, it happens to be MSME. Just to give you some data points, about 8 million MSMEs are there in India. 20% of those 8 million are into manufacturing. 80% is services sector. So let's pull them out. 2 million MSMEs on an average, the connected load is 200 to 300 kilowatt. That's the data point MSMEs have. And they, on an average, pay about an energy cost about 5 rupees 50 paisa. If we are not talking about 100% solarization, only 30%. That means if 300 kilowatt is the load, did they put a 300 kilowatt solar or to that matter any other RE sources, you're talking about a market potential of something in the vicinity of 35 gigawatt as we speak right now. And the MSME sector is growing. As the PLI kicks in, manufacturing comes in, more and more vendors will be needed. More and more MSMEs will get created. So this 35 gigawatt potential actually goes to 60 to 70 gigawatt. And this is something that should happen. The biggest challenge in entire MSME happens to be finance. The reason is that they have issues on the balance sheet of an MSME. I don't have to tell you everywhere, but it's not so strong. But there are problems over there. So they are in a way not bankable. So if an MSME goes to a local bank, he wants to put a 200 kilowatt solar module, and he wants a loan of maybe about 50, 60 lakhs. Fortunately, 60 lakhs loan proposal does not go beyond branch, because the branch head is empowered to do a loan of 2 crores or something like that. The branch head also has a target of 100 crores or 200 crores of total sanction and disbursement. The branch head is more conversant with housing finance, vehicular finance. So he pushes those loans at a branch instead of a solar loan. So the problem is the proposal never goes to the HO in a bank. At a branch level itself, the branch head does not have any benchmarks available for solar, and there are regulatory risks involved in putting up a solar project, be it net metering, gross metering, open access, variety of things. So they don't push it. So you have a massive market which actually is needed. And if we are missing out the MSME altogether, then we're actually missing out a fair amount of energy transition activity, which is very, very needed. Only in steel sector itself, 80% of the steel in India is recycled. That means they essentially buy scrap, have an induction furnace, and again recycle the steel. And most of the induction furnaces are obviously electricity based, and these are MSME. Now they are totally missed out on the energy transition path because you have a credit gap there. There's also a fair amount of credit gap in variety of places in the entire value chain too. For example, if we're talking about a solar project, term lending is, I think, the easiest thing. Every bank is doing it. Nobody's denying it because there are benchmarks available. There have been cases available for this. But to get this project up and running, you have the EPC people who are going to build up this project. Now, EPCs don't get working capital. There are vendors to the manufacturers. They also have a credit gap. So unless you unlock these entire credit gaps across the value chain, there will be challenges of meeting and putting up projects across India. This is something which I would like to leave it right now.
Maybe I'll come back to you. Thanks. Mr. Girija, Shankar, your initial thoughts on DRE. Can you limit to 3 minutes, please?
Yes.
In the interest of time? Yeah. Thank you. Chintan will pick it up on finance for sure again, on the specific questions.
So, in my view, I think the DRE is the capital intensive and it requires the support, whether it may be from the government side, whether it may be from the other market enabler. And if we see the DRE, I agree with the Sharan sir that the training and capacity building, which may address a certain type of the challenge through the DRE for the certain group of consumers. So we need to be inbuilt in your ecosystem that those training and capacity building elements should be part of that. I just want to share one of the, I think, the success story we have done under the MNRE scheme, the 70 million.
Yeah, are you presenting that in the next round? We'll have your presentation. Thank you.
So the major, the input or the quintessential part of the requirement of DRE is that it should be innovation. It should be addressed a certain challenge which are not maybe in a conventional manner cannot be addressed through the grid or the other operators. So it should be designed in a customized way, address those challenges and inbuilt the opportunities here where the financing and others can be happen.
Thank you, Mr. Shankar. If I may turn to Mr. P.C. Sharma, International Solar Alliance. Yeah, that's a intergovernmental UN institution for solar in India. And you've been looking at across the world. So your views on DRE for a change in India, please, to start with.
Thank you. As far as DRE is concerned, I have been hearing since morning from the honorable panelists that it should be reliable, scalable, and sustainable. So, but behind to make it reliable, to make it sustainable, is the capacity building. Technology is there, finances are there. The real challenge is who will do it on the ground. So we need capacity. So what I have observed, even while working with our ISA member countries, there are more than 600 million people still without access to electricity. So technology is there, but why it's not happening? It's the, I'll bet that the main reason for scaling or making it reliable is the capacity of the people that we need to develop. So capacity building is the core.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Thank you. Coming back to Mr. Sharan. Yeah, I'm coming to you only. I'm coming to you. Sir, you have detailed out a lot, and if I pick up those questions given to me by Power Foundation, it will be repeating what you said. I've already spoken about what I have with me today, right now written for you. But I would like your views on saying what ails DRE in scaling up in India was my starting question. Chintan came out with finance, and I completely in agreement with him. But sir, to you, saying what is it that policy, regulation, institutions could do? Because I clearly see what is emanating out. I would like to know from you, with your vast, long experience and an inspirational experience too, what is in it for us, and how does India use DRE?
The 2 points I would like to make here. Capacity building and skills development is not needed only at the village level. We need to have a support infrastructure, a support mechanism for the investors and financiers. Today, a lot of people from the small scale sector who would like to build a plant like this, they do have neither the financial capacity of their own nor the know-how to do the packaging and building of such a project. I think it's absolutely, if you want to promote this sector, we should create a platform where anybody who wants to build a village DRE, I'm first talking about village DRE, he can come to us, and at a very low cost, we'll do for him a first level planning. Tell him these are the things which are likely to succeed in this location.
What could MNRE do? Sorry,
MNRE in that structure is, for me, the ideal thing that MNRE do is to sponsor this platform. A platform to support anybody who wants to build renewable, decentralized renewable energy plants, to help them get to a stage that they can make a profitable business plan. That's one. The second extremely important thing that government should do is to link the DREs to their schemes of enterprise development in the village. For me, I have been supplying electricity from my microgrid to the pumps for 30 years. It is not necessary to have a separate panels for the pumps. So from the government side, I would really, really request MNRE to link the MSME programs, the social development programs in the village with the planning of the DRE.
Thank you, thank you. Very important points. We are getting to finance, we are getting to linking platform, linking it to entrepreneurship, development, jobs. That's critical. Let me turn to Chintan once again. Yeah, you mentioned finance, and getting to specific questions that I see with your kind of an umbrella experience that you have across private sector and then with IRIDA. And I would also like you to comment on the recent Suryo Ghar Yojana 2, and you brought in financing as a critical constraint. And therefore, there is IRIDA, there are banks. Where is it? Where is the gaps? Is it private enterprise? Is it public policy institutions need to do something? How does this gap, which you underscored, get bridged? We would like to look at solutions. Yeah, Chintan, please. Yeah.
I think you raised two questions related, so I'll take it one by one.
Yeah, sure.
So regarding the rooftop scheme, the latest announcement the government of India, I think from the sector perspective, I think it's a very positive development. Because what we've been seeing is almost every government, because of political compulsion, have been talking about freebies, as we talk about free electricity and all. Now, obviously, the free electricity is going to make a dent on the discounts on a larger perspective, because this is something like a rolling subsidies forever, and obviously the electricity prices have to be recovered, either from the demand charges or from cross-subsidy surcharge that the industries pay more, which is essentially not good for the economy at large. I think this particular scheme that has been announced, it essentially settles the issue of freebies forever, because the moment you have opted from the rooftop solar, you get about 200, 300 units free every year. So that the basic minimum need of the electricity is being met through this particular scheme, which is essentially a positive. Now, the questions that remains in this scheme on the financing front, we have the broad scheme where 60% sort of, if you're looking at 2 kilowatt system, 60% is subsidy from the central government. Rest is 40%, 30% would be given by the nationalized banks, maybe SBI, Bank of Baroda and all. 10% is the margin money that the user has to pay. Now the challenge over here is 40% of this non-subsidy amount can be easily financed because it's something like a housing finance company. Because you have what essentially would happen is bulk of the people would anyway have a mortgage on the house, and the same lender would essentially advance towards a rooftop solar. So it's easy. The challenge that comes is who will essentially finance the subsidy component. Because subsidy doesn't come overnight. As I understand the process from process flow is, once the commissioning is done of the solar plant and it registered on the portal of MNRE, MNRE would essentially process the subsidy and essentially give it to a DBT or a loan account of the user. That might take about a month or two, and before that, when the rooftop user is going to order for a rooftop system, that means there's a carrying cost of the vendor for about a month or so, another 2 months to get the subsidy in account. So 60% of the money somebody still needs to finance. So either it can be through a working capital, or it can be somebody comes ahead and finances those subsidy portion, as you know, because there is no risk in that, because once the project has been commissioned, it's a procedural thing, which is coming from the government.
Just to get you right, so you're basically talking about a delay in payment of subsidy.
It's not the delay in payment of subsidy. The whole idea is somebody still needs to fund it, because a 100 rupee system has to be up and ready and commissioned before the subsidy comes in. So there's a carrying cost, and this carrying cost would get into the working capital. Now this is where the challenge is going to be. How it happens in solar is OEMs don't drive rooftop solar. It is the dealers, the vendors, and the EPC people who drives it.
Right.
That means when you're buying a solar kit from an OEM, there's no credit involved. You have essentially to pay money to the OEM, and then there's a carrying cost that the vendor carries. And since this 60% is going to be a subsidy, don't expect the user to fund it.
Can you also comment on the SME part, which you brought in some 15 gigawatt potential? You mentioned. Can you talk about that?
So talking about the MSME part, as I was trying to tell you about how 2 million MSMEs on manufacturing side. On an average, if you won't take about 300 kilowatt of solarization of this, you're talking about almost 35 gigawatt of market size. The challenge with the MSME lies today is, if you look at their balance sheets, I mean to say they tinker with the balance sheet, everybody knows it, and which make them non-bankable, number one. Number two, a RESCO model in an MSME is a challenge because MSMEs are not having rating. Even if they have a rating, it will be very bad. And bulk of the MSMEs are normally term lend debt-free. They have working capital. Term lending normally a MSME does not have. That means they don't have a banking relation about term lending. That's the basic thing. There may be an exception of 5% in the MSME, but bulk of them they don't. Now the challenge over here is how do you solarize them? Because to solarize them, you need to finance them. That's the key part to it. So that's the major thing. That's a major credit gap happening. And this, unfortunately, since the MSME is a growth path, 2 million MSMEs today will become like 4 million MSMEs by 2030. That means this market size increases from 35 gigawatt to roughly 60 or 70 gigawatt. How do you essentially mainstream them? By creating financial structures and fund them. Now, I mean to say it's a time now for bulk of the fintech service providers to get involved, who are essentially ranging in the range of 10 lakhs, 8 lakhs of ticket size to larger tickets of 60 to 80 lakhs. And big financial FIs like PFC, REC, IREDA can essentially give line of credit to those fintech so that they can essentially transmit it to the MSMEs and do it.
Sorry, just to push you further, MSMEs are in clusters, 300, 400 clusters in the country, right? Now, yes, you're talking retailization, fintech, point taken completely, but why can't it be, and that lends it credibility on credit, why can't it be a MSME ministry-led solarization of park level aggregation, and therefore RESCOs could come in? So the aggregation And that then lit scale. We are talking about the scale of 50 lakh, nobody's interested. Lift the scale up, transaction cost is lower, credit becomes clearer because ministry is involved, government is involved as a SECI kind of a structure, and therefore you have got MSMEs solarized across clusters because this is geographically distributed clusters. And all clusters are then buying electricity from the TRESCO.
A point noted, Dhruba, MSME in ministry definitely is the pivot center for this. There's no doubt about it. And MSME ministry already has done a couple of things like CGTSME scheme is there. However, there are peculiar needs of sector-specific MSMEs. Like Ministry of Steel has got its own sets of MSMEs. Ministry of Road Transport has got its own sets of MSMEs. So these MSMEs, they look same, but they're different. The needs are different. So one has to tailor these things along the ministry, line ministry side, and also, more importantly, also in all the state governments. Because most of these MSMEs are regulated through the state governments. So it requires just not inter-ministerial thing, inter-state matters also. As I said, there is a potential, nobody is denying it.
Sure.
Almost every government, be it center or a state government, is pro-MSME. Nobody is denying that fact. There are huge amount of outlay available for this. But it's very important that this outlay is generally for almost everything in MSME. What has been missed out is we are not able to push the solarization there. Now we are talking about energy transition here and DRE here. So DRE is somehow not in a way getting connected. There are a lot of issues in that. As I told you, one of them is credit gap. The other thing is cluster-based approach itself. Cluster-based approach is perfectly fine. Wherever MSMEs are been successful for solarization is because of cluster-based approach only, because essentially you get up copying each other. That happens. But we're looking at a larger perspective of India. For example, if I would like to do it, I would straight away talk to Ministry of Steel. Okay, fine. You got n number of MSMEs in Chhattisgarh or in Jharkhand. Let's solarize them. Let's work out a program with an FLDG covers and things like that, so that you can push it. It has to be very focused.
Thank you, Chintan. Let me come to Mr. Shankar because you have something to talk about EESL's initiative on DRE. And I believe you have a short presentation. The floor is yours. Thank you, sir. Yeah. And in the interest of time, and I don't want to keep it waiting for lunch, maybe 5 minutes.
Sure. I will try to best by. So I'm not going in the detail. I think the earlier speaker in inaugural sessions has mentioned about why the DRE is important. And it should have, I think, 4 or 5 elements. So one may be it should be customized according to the requirement of the certain type of group users. It should also include innovation. It includes maybe employment generation, one of the component which will enhance its, I think, replicability and more scalability. And finance is one of the critical element. And as the Chintan has mentioned that it is one of the major challenge. It should be floated either from the government side or it's maybe through the business model where this financing can happen and the investors can come to finance such DRE projects. I also want to see that in India, I think whatever the programs, if we initiate, it will certainly have the transformative effect. So the scale you can able to generate and whatever the solutions for related to DRE, you can able to get the consumers. There may be the demand may be available in the market. And I also want to just share that in order to the decarbonization or the energy transition, which the international obligations we have came out with the either COP or the NDC, energy efficiency is one of the element and the electrification is the essential element where the DRE can play a major role. And with the integration of energy efficiency and renewable, I think the cost-effective or the affordable, reliable electricity solutions can be provided to the certain consumers, group of consumers. These are some slides giving how the energy efficiency make the impact on the affordability. So if we see that around 40% your requirement, if we target for 2030, can be meted through the energy efficiency. And energy efficiency is the element where I think the innovation you can able to do, and you can make the affordable solutions for those groups. Government of India has also have came out the program. One is the lifestyle for the environment, and another is the Bureau of Energy Efficiency Carbon Trading Program. So they also may provide some questions for integration of the DRE in the energy efficiency domain. And whatever the CO2 emissions can be avoided, that can be capitalized through the carbon trading market. EESL has came out this DRE initiatives, so with the support of MNRE and with the collaboration with the IIT Bombay, we have executed this 70 lakh solar study lamp scheme. It is a very unique program carried out in the 4 states, and it is provide the affordable lighting solution. So it is not the energy solution, but affordable lighting solution for the school-going children. And it has given a very good footprint and the impact. So there came out of around 832 solar shops just because of this program. So the employment generation is very can be integrated, and all these DRE programs should be focused on the employment generation. Also, there are the repair maintenance centers have came out. Large scale training has been provided. More than 7,000 self-help group members have been associated with this program. Second, with the Maharashtra Discom, EESL has came out this solarization of agriculture feeders. So around 195 megawatt capacity has been installed at 159 locations. And primarily these solar feeders are, or the plants are up to 2 to 10 megawatts. So different segments has been came out, and it is very successful program with the support of the Discom of Maharashtra. With, I think this initiative, this PM Kusum is outcome from the success of this scheme. Third initiatives we have came out with the support of MNRE is the Atal Jyoti Yojana. Here also the rural, the pathways has been lightened with the LED and the solar lights. So this has also part of the one of the scheme of the MNRE. And here the parliamentary locations has been, so the with the support of the Honorable Member of Parliament, they have provided the list of villages where these solar street lights are to be implemented, and EESL has completed these programs. The last we have came out one of the program, it is the solar PV based induction cook stove project. So this is one of the, I think, the key element where the Pradhan Mantri, this Surya Ghar Yojana or the other initiatives can be collaborated, because it will give the transformational change of requirement of the LPG based or the PNG based consumers. And the induction cook stove is the most efficient cooking device. It has the efficiency of 84%. So if it can be integrated with the battery storage and maybe integration with the grid, so this can provide a good maybe solutions where the LPG need can be reduced down, and whatever the subsidy component of which may be currently available for the LPG or PNG consumers, that can be diverted, and it can be a very large scale program can be chalked out. So currently this PM Surya Ghar Yojana along with the EESL has launched out the National Clean Cooking Appliance Program. Both can be blended together, and it can be able to provide a clean and efficient cooking solutions. So these are the, I think, the initiatives which EESL has carried out. And whatever the requirement may be a quintessential element of the DRE, we have tried to incorporate in these programs, although these projects are funded from the government side.
Thank you. Thank you. Very important initiatives from EESL. My last word to Mr. P.C. Sharma. What can we learn from your international experience and what can be done for DRE in India? International Solar Alliance has been active in this space.
Thank you. So again, what can be done? First point again will be the capacity building. That is what ISA does. That is our one of the priority areas to build the capacity. Training program and the capacity not only of technicians but engineers, even the bankers, because that question of the banks are not financing, because to make convince them that it's sustainable, it's reliable, and you have to finance it, and it makes a good sense to finance the solar technology, even the other DRE systems. The word distributed itself is beautiful, that you can generate wherever you require it, because small systems, it's not that everywhere you require more power, it's small power requirements for the different applications in the remote areas that is important. So it's now, I think even when the cost of solar PV panel, it was rupees 400 per watt, even after providing subsidy, it's cheaper than even at the rate of 100% cost. So I will not suggest subsidizing these products, because there is a limit of subsidy that will curtail the distribution of the applications in the vast rural areas that India has, or even any other country have. Another point will be to provide that programmatic support. Of course, these pilot projects are required in some of the areas. Those types of grants can be given. Those can be encouraged, but that too on a small scale, just to establish, just to showcase if an area that these DRE system works. And of course, easy access to finance that has to be encouraged, and entrepreneurship. Yes, we should, instead of providing subsidies for the system, it should be the financial support to the entrepreneurs in our rural areas that should be encouraged. And of course, we should go for advocacy and analytics, providing such type of the business models based on the area. It can be different for the different areas as per the requirement. Those things should be encouraged. These are the four points that are like for the promotion of DREs in India or even ISA member countries. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all for this great session. Just to summarize and take key takeaways from here, there needs to be reliability through technology, reliability through capacity building, training, whichever way. DRE needs to be reliable. DRE needs government programs similar to large scale as supported by EESL that need capacity building at various levels. And above all, there needs to be a financing mechanism for viable, economically viable business models. Subsidy cannot last forever. And finally, just my 2 cents. I think Chintan alluded to it. We need to change the politics from appeasement to empowerment. Thank you.
We would like to request our panelists to kindly please stay back for a little while, because we would be presenting tokens of appreciation and respect for each of our speakers or presenters. Thank you for that enriching discussion. DRE solutions are pillars of India's sustainable development journey. May I please request Dr. Sambit Basu to share tokens of appreciation for each of our presenters. Thank you for that enlightening discussion. And as we say that DRE solutions are pillars of India's sustainable development journey, addressing critical aspects such as energy access, clean energy transition, and rural empowerment. We thank each of our speakers, and here's a token of appreciation. जोरदार तालियों के साथ धन्यवाद. So maybe we could take in a few questions from the audience, just in case कोई कुछ पूछना चाहे. A quick Q&A with the audience, because it seems right to also involve the members of the audience in sharing of these ideas, knowledge, or whatever they would like to add. Any observations? Ji,
Let's
ek
take
mic
three
दीजिए
questions. Yeah, three questions.
सब. 3 questions.
Yes, sir. And please address your questions to anyone you feel like.
I'll address to the dais. I was listening to the discussions, and one of the moot point came in terms of flow of finance and access to finance, which Mr. Shah elaborated in great details. I would like to know, and also he mentioned that the being small, they don't have the rating strength, and they find it difficult to finance their operations. Now, almost on a similar line, like credit guarantee scheme that government has introduced for startups, can we also embark upon such scheme for the eligible DRE companies, so that the subsidy component, as you are telling, that part can be supported by such a guarantee scheme? Thank you, sir.
No, I just pointed out the issue that I perceive, because I come from the industry, and the whole question is that is 60% of this subsidy, somebody still has to meet it for a duration maybe 2 to 3 months. So this is problem, it is also an opportunity for bulk of the lenders. So essentially now once the project gets commissioned, the only punt the lender is taking is Government of India, which is a non-issue. The whole thing is this is an opportunity, but this is also a problem. So, and we'll have to identify such problems which are I call it credit gaps in the entire value chain. So we need to see the entire value chain, wherever these credit gaps are, these are problems, can be converted into opportunities. I think this requires joint activity, that's how I would say it. So I, from this NSEFI, has been reaching out to various lenders, convincing them that you should also create a product to essentially fund this gap of 3 months or something like that. So that what happens, the money circulation is faster. Otherwise what happens, there's a finite capital that a vendor or a dealer has got, and he'll be able to do only that amount of business. The moment this 60% financing comes into picture, the market size actually doubles or even triples, because you have liquidity in your hand. That's the whole idea. And I don't say that this is the only credit gap. There are various credit gaps. Even vendor financing is something which is there, channel partner financing is there. These are something which has not been taken by the mainstream lenders at this juncture. So maybe what we can push is fintech platforms to do it, and later the mainstream lenders can come into picture. So this is an ongoing cycle, we will keep on evolving. That is what I wanted to say.
Can I just add 2 cents to the answer or what Chintan has added? Your question is relevant, sir, and by the way, CGTMSE is there, and it could be enabled to do a credit guarantee which you had asked for. And the other institution which can be thought of, instead of trying to create a separate one, it's called NCGTC. CGTMSE is a MSME institution which today is reaching up to 5 crore collateral free, so could be a possibility. And by the way, there is an initiative to do that already in the offing. Another institution is NCGTC, and that could also be enabled to do the same. But you have a valid point, sir. Thank you.
Yeah,
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Karthik, and I work on building business models, which I think Chintan is also aware of. I have one observation and a question as well. One observation is, I think, a key problem that or rather a question that has not been answered is most or many of the MSMEs would be working in rented premises. So their ability to invest in solar is highly compromised because of that. How does that question get answered? But the other question I have is a technical one, which is that there will be periods of time when energy is being produced by the DRE but not being consumed locally. In such situations, how does that affect the grid, and how can that be solved, then based on which business model can be devised for that? Yeah.
You want to take that?
For the grid part, I can say that one solution may be the battery storage, but you can also assume the grid as a battery storage, because the grid has the infinite limits. So that can also provide support. So if the extra is generated, it can goes to grid, and whenever it require, you can able to take those units. That may be the one option. Another is you can put the battery storage and utilize those.
I have another point on, sorry. Is it working? This issue of the space, land for PV is acute everywhere. So the point you are making in our concept, all the roofs in the village will be a part of the DRE. The DRE microgrid will lease these roofs from all the owners. And if one enterprise doesn't have its own roof premises, doesn't matter, it will get electricity from the microgrid, which is servicing that village at a price which makes his microgrid, his enterprise also viable. So that is where we are talking about a local planning on an integrated basis at the local level, which services all the needs of that area. And in the primary thing, it will have surpluses now and again, but it's not a precondition for the financial success of the DRE. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the leasehold is a non-issue right now. Bulk of the RE projects today are on leasehold lands. So bankers have now taken a different view for creating of mortgage. So you can create a mortgage on leasehold. That's the problem is solved over there. As far as the electricity bill is concerned, I think one can always apply to the distribution company for change of electricity bill from the owner to the lessee. So that is something which is now acceptable across India. So this is a problem. It looks like a problem, but there's a solution for that now.
One last question, please.
My name is Upasna, and I represent Resham Sutra here. We are creating livelihood opportunities in sericulture for tribal women. So, sir, as you said, we do a lot of trainings for them so that they can adopt our DRE machines to make yarn out of a naturally occurring cocoon. Now, as sir has said, you know, the major challenge we are facing is in accessing credit linkages for these rural women. So I'll just recount an experience I had in Chhattisgarh last year. So we trained about 60 women into using our machines to make tussar yarn, and we wanted all of them to be micro-entrepreneurs, buy their own machines and not be dependent on any subsidies. But believe me, the entire documentation work took so long for the loans to get released that gap, they lost interest of what we had trained them on. So how can we expedite these very, very small loans? They're like of the ticket size of about 20,000 per rural women. But the kind of documentation and processing time, I mean, that's my humble request to all the advisors here. I mean, I'm just telling you the pain point of rural women.
Can I?
Ma'am, I think the PM has announced this Lakpati Didi, and also the SRLM, if the capacity you see, in all states, a large number of SRLMs are there. So they are providing, they are having the revolving fund, and they can also provide the finance to the local self-help groups. So this may be the one of the solutions where you need not require a long, I think, the detailed financing requirement, but it may be only small size. For the large size, you needs to be, I think, maybe go through the process of the banks or the NBFC.
Thank you, ma'am. Very relevant question. I just want to add my 2 cents into it. The problem presented is real. The question of credit to women, India has addressed this problem through a very transformative microfinance industry, and I'm not referring to government over here. The question is, you have so many microfinance companies, MFIs, which are now regulated, and even their interest rates are regulated. It's a question of getting microfinance MFIN, if I may suggest a solution, microfinance industry network activated, and you gave me a ticket size which is 20,000, which fits perfectly the ticket size, and it is social collateral. It is not collateral based on your machines either, because microfinance works on social collateral, not the real collateral per se. So I think microfinance needs to be activated on the private credit side, and the second access to finance is what I would fall back if it is Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, and I understand Tasar over there, needs to basically through the self-help groups. The SHG, the public credit system, and I really can't offer you a solution, but it is that NABARD to state cooperative banks, to district cooperative banks, to primary area cooperative society, that's your public credit system, that needs to get addressed through self-help groups. Finally, there could be chit funds, which also regulated today. It could be a community of chit funds getting created as a cooperative. So these are possible thoughts that you can work on. My organization, CPI, is working with Resham Sutra in terms of trying to support their initiative, and we'll be happy to discuss and take that forward. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was a wonderful session, insightful panel discussion that we just heard. And thank you, speakers, for giving us your time and sharing with us your valuable experiences, your perspectives, your insights, your knowledge, your thoughts with all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, we would now be inviting all attendees for lunch. We request you to be kindly back by 2 p.m. for our panel discussion on empowering communities. एक बहुत ही interesting session जिसकी हम शुरुआत करेंगे इस छोटे break के बाद, इस lunch के बाद. सबसे निवेदन है कि kindly be back by 2 p.m. so that we can listen to our eminent speakers जो कि आगे की sessions में हमें join करने वाले हैं. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. Thank you.